Hello, everyone, and welcome to Big Sam's Long Balls podcast with me, Dan. Now, in today's video, we are going to be talking about my team, Liverpool, and continuing on from their really awful start to the season. In all honesty, the worst start that we've had under Jurgen Klopp's tenure. Is it the curse of his seventh season, like what happened at Mainz at Dortmund? I don't know about that, but either way, Liverpool are in a pretty bad place. Very, very awful reign of form right now. We went away to Goodison Park, and look, in context, we more often than not we draw away from home uh, in the Merseyside derby away at Goodison Park, and usually add a bit of context to it. It's not the worst result in the world. Derby day is usually pretty tense. It's pretty horrible for any team really in world football, and more often than not, you will take a draw, especially away from home. However, when you add into the fact that Liverpool drew both their games this season, then went away to Manchester United and lost, is not it just adds to the negativity surrounding this football club right now. In terms of the actual game, not really much to go on about. I know that Jordan Pickford was man of the match, and you would say deservedly so. Really, he did make so many saves, so many wonderful saves, but to stop Liverpool in the end. But you'd have to say, or I would say, as a Liverpool fan, I don't think really Liverpool did enough to win the game. I'm sure some people would disagree with that, and that's absolutely fair enough. But I just felt again that Liverpool were tepid. They were limp really in that game, and they just gave Everton too much. Everton were by far the better team in the first half for me. Just came out with that aggression, that intensity. Once again, Liverpool came out just really, really slow, looking negative. I scared even. I don't know, but once again, Liverpool have come out to a game and just not with the right attitude, not with the right intensity. And for a team that harps on about intensity, even released a book on it, our assistant manager. So for a team that goes on about intensity an awful lot, and we keep mentioning how we want to fight, we want to press the opposition, all of this, all these sort of speeches that could be in Braveheart almost, but for a team that sort of goes on about the aggression and intensity, we've been outfought pretty much in every single game, barring Bournemouth. Um, I don't think we've gone ahead in any single game apart from Bournemouth. So, you know, and VAR saved us really again yesterday. Connor Cody offside. For me, it was offside, but it was very, very tense. If it was given, it would have been fair enough. The Virgil van Dijk potential red card for me. Um, I understand why it was only a yellow, but if that was the other way around, I would have been screaming for a red card. So again, it could have very, very easily have been a red. Everton really got at us. We were so open on the counter attack. Our midfield once again, really, really poor in transitions. Couldn't win the ball back. Just too easy. And Liverpool, although we did create chances. Jordan Pickford, as I said, made some wonderful saves. Alisson himself was probably our best player realistically, and that probably says everything about us on the day. In terms of individual performances, I thought defensively, despite what I've just said, I thought was a little bit better. I thought Costas was decent. I thought he struggled at the start, but then grew into the game. Had a couple of battles with Gordon, which I actually think fired him up and got him going. And he started the second half, I thought, pretty well. And then he was substituted, and it didn't make any sense to me. Those substitutions absolutely killed us. But Costas, I thought was all right. Van Dijk and Gomez, I thought were better than what they have been. Barring the Bournemouth game, obviously, but it was a much better performance from Gomez. Obviously, he made one really, really poor mistake, but actually, it was much better. I thought Trent, the reverse really of what we've seen. We've seen him really poor defensively all season, not really giving anything. I actually thought defensively he was okay, but just going forward, there was nothing there. And for me, he looks shot at this moment in time. Trent Alexander-Arnold. We know how good of a player he is, and we know that he will get back there. But I remember back earlier on in the summer, Jurgen Klopp had mentioned about last season, and he'd spoken specifically about Trent Alexander-Arnold, and it was something along the lines of he played 80% or 75% of the season in that red zone, meaning that he was really being overworked. He was being overplayed. He was being overused. He was really on the verge of getting injured and potentially picking up a long-term injury. And it's a bit of a worry, I think, for me, for Trent, because if he's played that much of last season in the red zone, he's come into this season, he's repeatedly playing. There's no backup. Obviously, we sold Nico Williams. We brought in Ramsey, who unfortunately has just been injured since the day we signed him. So it's either Joe Gomez or James Milner who have to come in to cover. Now, James Milner coming on was actually one of those substitutions that I thought killed the game. The first half I thought was pretty crap until the final 5 minutes, where Darwin Nunes gets a shot off, and it's a really great shot. And Jordan Pickford obviously makes a wonderful save. Luis Diaz hits the post. He really should be scoring from that position, in all honesty. But um, we started the second half, changed sort of formation, a 4-2-3-1, a 4-4, if you will. To me, it looked more like a 4-4, but obviously, um, that's not massively important. But we really got at Everton, and it just felt like a matter of time. That those first 15, 16 minutes of the second half was some of the best football I thought we played really this season. Aggressive, getting shots off. Really looking like a strong attacking unit, and for the first time, sort of some of our players looking sort of in tune with each other. And then suddenly, the substitutions came in. Robertson came on, and I thought had again a pretty average game. James Milner came on, and he was so bad at right back that we had to then bring on Matip to replace that substitution and put James Milner into a midfield where again he was really ineffective. Now I don't want this to be a negative or just critiquing James Milner and having a pop at him and just singling him out, but James Milner he's not the man anymore. He's not the answer for Liverpool Football Club. He's a man who obviously has a place in his squad. He needs to be in training, keeping the standards up. He's obviously important in the locker room, and he's an important figure to be able to bring on in games for the final 15 minutes and whatever, but not when you're chasing a game or you need to win a game. James Milner is not that player. And to be honest, I remember him playing at fullback, whether at left back or right back, 4 or 5 years ago, and it being terrifying then. So at this point in his career, he's not, especially added into the fact that we're playing such a high line. You need very, very quick players in those positions. James Milner has struggled with that his whole career, let alone playing in a fullback position, which isn't his natural position. So up against the likes of Gordon in that second half it was awful, really, really watching. So we need to figure out this right back situation, because I do think that Trent needs to come out, perhaps for a little while, not sort of dropped completely, but I think starting on the bench and then coming into games, obviously with the 5 sub rule, both in Europe and in the Premier League now. So Trent can play each game, but I think while looking at his whole career at Liverpool, we have to remember he's only a few years older than the likes of Carvalho and Elliott, who everyone sort of perceives as kids really in this Liverpool team, and they are. But Trent's only 3 years older than these guys, and he's played sort of relentlessly since he was younger than these guys in this Liverpool team. So I think he needs a break. I think mentally, physically, he looks shot to pieces. We could talk about, some positives in the game, that actually defensively he was okay, but going forward, some of those passes, they were just misplaced. They were all over the place, really. So he needs to be taken out for me, and just given a little bit of a rest. Another issue was offensively. Darwin Nunes was really, really struggling. He looked isolated. Him and Diaz were just running into the same spaces. If you'd seen Nunes play regularly at Benfica, you would know that he often played on that left-hand side. So sometimes he wouldn't necessarily just be an out-and-out number 9 for Benfica. Sometimes he would start through the middle. Sometimes he would start out wide on the left. And that's where he wants to operate a lot of times, go out wide, and sort of, a bit of like an inverted forward at times. So it is going to take time. We keep hearing things like it's a transitional season, and I know it's not a word I particularly enjoy hearing as a football fan. I know no one really enjoys hearing that. And a lot of fans are going, well, how can it be a transitional season? Really, we've only brought in Darwin Nunes for the first team. Carvalho is obviously a bit of a squad option for now, and Ramsey certainly a squad option. So how can it be a transitional period? However, we do have older players who I think are beginning to being phased out. We do have, although we brought in Nunes, Elliott's coming into the team, becoming a regular. Carvalho, I think, has sort of surprised everyone. It'd be interesting to see what happens when Ramsey's fit. Obviously, we've got the new boy Arthur. So it's a transition in the sense of that we do have new players, but also stylistically, we are changing. I don't think the 4-3-3 is working. As you can see on the screen, I do have a starting 11 and a slightly different formation. We'll go through that in a minute. That is what I would like to see against Napoli, and potentially the next couple of games. Maybe not how we would approach every single game, but this 4-3-3, I think, teams, I wouldn't necessarily say have just figured us out, because we are creating chances, we are playing well. in moments, but we're just lacking that consistency in games. And I just feel like maybe a switch up would really suit this team, having seen what the team was able to do for those 15, 16 minutes against Everton. It was really, really exciting. And I think a change in formation will be able to get someone like a Mo Salah hopefully back among the goals, because right now he just seems to be staying really, really wide. I know Jurgen Klopp has sort of dismissed that and says like he's not staying any wider than what he has done in previous seasons. But the fact remains, obviously, Jurgen Klopp will know more, and his coaches will know more than the likes of me. But all I can say is what I'm seeing with my eyes. I don't have the stats available. Obviously, like if you compare the heat maps, they're not too different. But he doesn't seem to be getting in the box. He doesn't seem to be getting in those positions. And he only really did it in the final few minutes against the game in Everton, and he nearly scored. So I don't really understand why he's staying so far out wide. I don't know whether the 4-3-3, Harvey Elliott playing on that side just behind him. They're very, I would say they're kind of similar players in the sense that they're both left-footed. They both operate in those same areas. You know, they both sort of operate around about here, and I feel like they're getting in each other's way a little bit. So Mo Salah will stay out wide because if Salah's here or if Harvey Elliott's here, they're both similar in the sense that they're left-footed. They've both always got to cut inside and either go for a shot or a cross. And I think this is one thing that is frustrating me as a Liverpool fan. Let me know in the comments if it's how you feel about this. But usually we'd have Diaz out on this left-hand side. We would have Salah out on the right. And while it worked for Mane, we're talking about are we missing Mane? Well, of course we're missing Mane because he's a world-class player, but I don't think Mane would solve the issues right now. And actually, if you look back at last season, Mane really, really struggled, especially at the beginning part of the season. It was only the second half, once he came back from the African Cup of Nations, where he really went up another level. And I think that was largely because we put Mane through the middle. Out wide, he was really, really struggling for us. And I think we're seeing similar reasons as to why Diaz and Salah are struggling in terms of, their goal output. Diaz in particular is, I think, for me, a very, very frustrating player. I love watching him. I think he's a terrific talent. But the amount of times that both Salah and Diaz just cut inside and they run into trouble. And the thing is while it's been brilliant having inverted forwards, teams now are going to, every time a team plays against Liverpool, it's going to be a low block 90% of the time. The only time that we might have space to run in behind for the likes of Darwin Nunes to really feast upon will be against the likes of Manchester City. That's why he looks so brilliant, and this whole Liverpool team looked brilliant against them in the Community Shield. Obviously, a large portion of that was because City were off it, and I wouldn't fancy our chances against City, certainly right now, but I wouldn't be surprised if we scored a couple of goals against them and played brilliantly, because they might play into some of our strengths at times. They play a high line, we can press them. That if we get the ball in transitions, we can get the likes of Salah and Diaz and Nunes running into space. But 90% of the time, we're not going to be able to do that. So I think a change in formation, a change in setup at times is a necessity. It doesn't mean that we have to play that all the time, but I just think sticking to this 4-3-3 is doing more harm than good. And I was really happy actually seeing Liverpool go to like a 44 or 4-3-1, whatever you want to call it, for the start of the second half against Everton. And if we'd stuck with that for just a little bit longer, I think that goal would have come, no matter how good Pickford was. I just felt that goal would come. But this is a lineup that I would personally like to see Liverpool try at times, and I'll just explain why. So obviously we're going to stick with Alisson in goal. There's no other option really in our squad. And to be honest, he's probably been our most consistent player this season. I think Van Dijk and Matip, as good as Joe Gomez has been, and I've been impressed with him. I am critical of Gomez at times. I feel like he does make mistakes. I feel like he can be got at. And to be honest, this whole Liverpool team is making mistakes. So he certainly doesn't stand out in that regard. But I do feel that Van Dijk and Gomez played well against Everton. I feel like they've been okay this season, barring the Manchester United game. I thought, since then they've been fairly solid. However, I think our best centre-back partnership right now is Van Dijk and Matip, and in these points in their careers, I think Matip is a better centre back than Joe Gomez. Hopefully, by the end of the season, we'll be seeing the likes of Konate and Matip, the likes of Konate and Gomez playing more regularly. But for now, I think that Van Dijk and Matip are our best centre back partnership, and with the way that we are playing, I think we need to get our best players and our best partnerships on the pitch. I would like to see Costa start again. I thought he struggled maybe at the beginning against Everton, and he's had like a couple of poor cameos. But I thought he started the game really. He actually got into the game and started playing really, really well. There was a couple of frustrating moments where he got in good positions. Wasteful in terms of, that final ball, those crosses. I think, you could say that about this whole Liverpool team right now. We are sort of wasteful in the final third. But a few more minutes under his belt, and I'm sure we will see a little bit more consistency from Tsimikas. And to be fair, when Robertson came on, I thought we looked poorer. I'm not saying that Costas is a better player than Robertson. I do think that Robertson is still our number one left back. But again, what I said about Trent, I think Robertson needs a rest, maybe just come out of the starting lineup for the next couple of games. He can obviously come on with that 5-sub rule and just give Costas a bit of a go, because I think Costas is a little bit more balanced than Robertson. And Robertson is more aggressive, and while sometimes that's great, when you play on the high line, teams want to counter you. They want you to commit, and people have criticised Van Dijk and say he's only defending with his aura at times and that he's backing away from players. But the fact is when you play such a high line, if you continually commit, more often than not, a centre forward, a winger, they're going to knock the ball past you. They'll either be able to sort of buy a foul, and meaning that because you play such a high line, it could be deemed as a goal scoring opportunity, therefore bringing more red cards into play. We saw that with the Van Dijk situation when he went in. I think it was on Unana, the potential red card. That was the one time he really committed and he messed up. So I'm happy with how Van Dijk is defending. Obviously, I want to see a little bit more intensity and at times and going for things, but equally, I don't feel like committing 100% of the time always works. And we get that with Robertson. I thought when he came on, Everton started to counter us a lot more easier than when Tsimikas was playing. Again, you might disagree with that. That's fine. That's just obviously what I observed. And I feel like Tsimikas is a little bit more of a balanced player. So I'd like to see Costas playing. Obviously, we spoke about the centre-back partnership. And just, I think Trent needs to come out of this team at the moment. Obviously, Ramsey's injured. Milner is a massive no. He cannot play at right back. He cannot play at left back again. Please, I urge you, Klopp. So Gomez can play there. And actually, I think when Gomez went to right back towards, I think maybe the final 10 minutes or so, maybe 10, 15 minutes of the game, Liverpool looked so much more balanced. And suddenly Everton were really, I thought, were struggling to counter us quite as much. And Liverpool were able to get on the ball. They're winning it back a lot more. And we were able to sort of get at them. And those final few minutes, we looked the more likely team to go on and win. So I'd like to see Gomez start at right back, certainly away at Napoli, and maybe for the next couple of games. A double pivot, help Fabinho out, give Arthur a go. From what I've seen, and I haven't seen a lot of him throughout his time at Barcelona and at Juventus, but what I have seen, combined with sort of talking to a couple of Juventus fans, they feel like he does fit that sort of two-man midfield better than maybe he would as a midfield three. He can sit deep with Fabinho. He can help him out. He's very good in those transitions. He wins a lot of those 50-50s. He wins that ball in the second phase, which suits Liverpool down to the ground. And his passing success rate is fantastic. He can obviously play sort of those long balls, the likes of Nunes, play a break between the lines, but also just keep things simple. Something that Van Dijk kind of alluded to in his post-match interview against Everton. If you haven't seen it, it's worth checking out on BT Sport. But he was talking about some of the frustrations, and the interviewer said, where did it go wrong? And he mentions a calmness with Liverpool, and obviously being away from home, Goodison Park, all of this. And he just mentioned, sort of seemed to suggest that Liverpool players got rattled. Maybe this is like a common theme throughout most of these games so far, and they're just not keeping calm and sticking to the game plan and playing, switching the play, playing those sideways passes, but playing them quickly, one touch or two touch maximum. Every single player is taking sort of, 3, 4, 5, 6 touches at times. I thought it was a little bit ironic for Van Dijk to say it because I think he's quite guilty of doing it, but I thought that was quite interesting, keeping a calmness and just keeping that ball. Hopefully someone like an Arthur can bring that, especially while Thiago's out. Maybe Thiago can play against Napoli. Hopefully he comes back to training tomorrow. But while he's out, and obviously it looks like Naby Keita's going to be out long term because he's been left out of our Champions League squad, and Henderson's obviously a couple of weeks away. Maybe a double pivot of these two would just work wonders, and it might just help these guys out a little bit more and help stop us from conceding first. I would go with 4 attackers, and just sort of help out someone like a Darwin Nunes as much as possible, but also help out Mo Salah, get him a little bit more central. And the reason why I've put these players in these positions is, well, I don't think Diaz on the left wing is particularly working the same way that I don't think Salah is, because against this low block, every single time they're having to cut inside, they're having to either score a worldie that Diaz did against Palace, or it's going to have to take a deflection, because every time they cut inside, they've got 6, 7 players at times in front of them, and it's not going in, it's not working. We need to fix things up. I put Carvalho here because in a midfield, look, I think this guy's very, very talented. However, the midfield three did not work against Everton. Now, I don't think that's particularly his or Harvey Elliott's fault. I mentioned in my last video that that's not a midfield that I think Jurgen Klopp would go for. It's not a midfield that I would want to see with those two playing in front of Fabinho. I don't see a balance to it personally. I do feel that physically they aren't there yet. And look, they're 19 and 20 respectively. So of course they're not going to be, especially playing in the Premier League, despite them being top players. I want to see Carvalho a little bit more up the pitch. And I felt for them on Saturday lunchtime. I really did, because when I saw that lineup, although I was a bit worried, I was excited by it. I thought, okay, we'll definitely concede, but we'll create chances and we'll certainly score with these guys on the pitch, and we'll actually play through the middle, which is something I've been really urging Liverpool to try and do. If you've seen any of my videos recently, I mentioned it after the Palace game that we started to play better football once Darwin Nunes went off, and that wasn't a critique of Nunes, but the reason being is we got the ball and we kept it on the ground and we tried to play through Palace and we tried to play through them in the middle of the pitch, and suddenly it was causing Palace so many problems and we looked a much better team. We seem to right now just be getting the ball out wide, either to Trent, to Robbo, or whoever, and just keep whipping it in, especially with this guy up top. He's 6'3", something like that. So we just seem to have this tendency now just to get the ball out wide, whip it into the box. I said before the Everton game, even if Nunes starts, or if it's Firmino or whoever, although we've got big players, although we've got good players in the air, please don't keep doing that. Obviously, we can do it at times. You've got to mix things up, but the likes of Tarkowski and Cody, it's their bread and butter, especially playing in a low block. If you get the ball out wide, whip it in, they'll head it away. They'll head it away for 90 minutes, and that's exactly what they did. Every time we got the ball out wide and whipped it into the box, they looked very, very comfortable. And whenever we tried to play through the middle of the park, which was very rarely, we caused more problems. So I felt really sorry for Carvalho and Elliott, because we played them both in what looked like a very exciting and attacking midfield three, but we didn't pass them the ball. We just kept going out wide and just missing them out. So tactically, I don't really understand what the likes of Klopp and Pep Lingers were really trying to achieve with those tactics. So I would like to see Carvalho further forward. I'd like to see him out wide on that left-hand side. He doesn't have the pace of a Salah. He doesn't have the pace of a Nunes or a Diaz. But actually, I think maybe he's got a little bit more craft at times. Diaz is a top player. There's no doubt. There's no doubting in that. He's been one of our best players, our most consistent players. However, that end product just isn't there if we are naturally going to compare him to a Sadio Mane. So putting him on that left-hand side where he's got to attack players, keep cutting inside against on the low block, and scoring a screamer. That's the task for Diaz and a Salah both now, and I don't think it's a surprise that both players are really, really struggling with that. So I would like to see Carvalho out on that left hand side. He's got a lot about him. I think you can also put an Harvey Elliott out here or a Diogo Jota, but I would give Elliott a little bit of a rest, and obviously give Jota the final sort of 25, maybe 30 minutes against Napoli, build up his fitness, because he's missed the whole of pre-season. So starting him away at Napoli or starting him in the next few games, I think just wouldn't work. But Carvalho on that left hand side, yes, again, he will have to cut in, but it won't be on both wings. So you've got a bit of a variety, and I think Carvalho will be happy. He tends to get into the box a little bit more than Luis Diaz. Luis Diaz tends to stick out wide from what I've seen so far. And because of that, I would put him on that right-hand side. If he's playing in front of Trent, I think he offers Trent that little bit more protection. I think one of the reasons why we're struggling, or why Mo Salah's been struggling, is, as I think I mentioned earlier, Harvey Elliott has been in these positions and him and Salah are sort of getting in each other's way. With a double pivot with these two, they're not going to enter this area of the pitch. So get the ball to Diaz out wide, get him to commit that fullback. And instead of just having to cut inside and do something, spectacular, football's a simple game. Let's keep it really simple. Diaz on his favourite foot on that right-hand side, isolate that left back, whoever it is, whether it's against Napoli, Wolves next, or so on and so on. Give him a run of games on that right-hand side, isolate the left back, get to the byline, and whip that ball in, across the 6-yard box or whatever, and let the people like Darwin Nunes and Salah be in the box, and let them feast, really, because the amount of times that I see teams counter on us, get to the byline, whip the balls into the box, and we're really scrambling. It's so easy, but we've constantly got attackers and midfielders who are trying to always cut back onside onto their favourite foot. And look, it's worked for a long time, but I think against this, this incredibly low blocks that we're playing week in, week out, I think we need to just actually simplify things. And one criticism I have of Klopp and our coaching staff is when things don't go our way, we tend to overcomplicate things more and more and more. Football is a very, very simple game. And actually, I would just like to see, just take the pressure off Diaz a little bit in terms of goals and all of that. Get him on that right-hand side and just say to him, I want you to run. I just want you to take on that fullback, get past him, and then just whip balls into the box. And this is kind of, it's like a 4-4-2, a 4-2-3-1, a 4-4, whatever you want to call it. But give Darwin Nunes a run of games. You could play Bobby here and you could put Salah there and Diaz out here and Carvalho on the bench. Of course you can. But I think get Salah in the box as well. Classic sort of, early 2000s formation a little bit when you go back to watching the classic, go back and watch Arsenal versus Barcelona Champions League final 2006, that the players that they have are incredible, but they're all sort of like fit into this sort of 4-2-4 or 4-4-2 formation. But it works. What happened to that sort of second striker, that supportive striker? This was a formation I wanted to see us play with someone like Minamino, because he did it so well with Haaland for Salzburg, but we never did it. And I'd like to see maybe these two play sort of centrally together, get them both in the games more, get them both in the goals, have the likes of Darwin Nunes playing off the shoulder. And suddenly, as defenders, if you're seeing Diaz running at you, getting to the byline, you're seeing Carvalho with that craft where he can cut inside, and you've got Nunes playing on the shoulder, and suddenly Salah playing off him. That's going to get you goals, I think. And you can just keep things simple in the midfield. Really, really simple. These two will win the ball back, I think, a lot better than what we've been doing in a midfield three, where, we've only got one sort of defensive midfielder. Get these two to, build up a bit of a partnership, keep things simple. And then obviously we don't have to have such, attacking fullbacks because we've got a front four. And then suddenly I think, defensively we'll be a little bit more sound and we've got goals in that. Now, I'm not saying that this is the formation that Liverpool should, revert to for the rest of the season, but I think maybe for the next couple of games we could try this. We don't have to try it from minute one, but we could revert to it in different games. It would be nice. I think it would be interesting at least to see this against Napoli, to see it certainly against Wolves, who we play against next week. They are certainly going to play defensive football. We've got some really, really tough games coming up, the likes of Chelsea, the likes of Arsenal and Manchester City, and it would be interesting to go in to games with a change of formation. We could do Fabinho and Arthur. We could do Fabinho and Thiago when back fit. We can do Fabinho and Henderson as well. These players can all do a double pivot. And it means that you can also take out Fabinho at times and go, it might be a little bit of a risk, but you could go maybe Arthur and Thiago. You could maybe go Thiago and Henderson, or Henderson and Arthur, depending on what happens. But these players are capable of playing a double pivot. It might just help out our back four a little bit more. We win the ball back. We, better in transitions. We recycle the ball, and suddenly we've got four attackers. And I would like to see Diaz on that right-hand side, as I've already mentioned, sort of, just get at defenders, get to the byline, whip those balls into the box, and suddenly we've got two players in the penalty area at all times. And I think just chaos will ensue. And I don't think opposition teams would want to go up against that. And once Jota is back fit, you can then swap him out for Carvalho's position, or you could put a Harvey Elliott in there, anywhere really in that front four. So, yeah, I think Liverpool are in a really tough situation at this moment in time. However, we do have a wonderful manager, a wonderful coaching staff, incredible players. I was going to do another video at Liverpool, maybe a little bit of a longer one, talking about Jurgen Klopp, talking about coaching setup, where I do think that maybe when we compare him to someone like Sir Alex Ferguson, you look at the ruthlessness, and maybe Jurgen Klopp is too much in the sentiment, keeping older players, keeping the same coaching staff and setup. Whereas you look at Alex Ferguson, he was ruthless enough to kick players out, or to move them on rather, and do the same with the coaching setup. They could win a number of Premier League titles, but suddenly a lot of those coaches would move on and they would bring in fresh ones. Something that Gary Neville said, that was ruthless, but it worked, and it just kept those players on their toes. And it would be interesting, and I think it would be something that maybe I would like to see Jurgen Klopp and Liverpool do. I don't think we will do it, because obviously Jurgen Klopp is very happy, and he sticks by his coaching setup. But new coaches coming in would be exciting to see. Either way, Liverpool are in a really bad place at this moment in time, but I do feel that with the options that we have available, we should be playing better football than what we're doing. And the 4-2-4 or the 4-2-3-1 that we saw for about 15-20 minutes against Everton was really good, and it was really exciting. And actually, I think this is something that Liverpool can do over these next few games. Forget the 4-3-3 for a little while. Just go with some new tactics. Get the likes of Nunes and Salah in their box. feed them as much as possible, get them in the goals, and get Diaz to a point where he's running at players and beating them regularly, and getting assists. Forget about having to constantly cut inside and score screamers game after game. And I think a formation like this could do wonders for Liverpool, and then we could start to bed in players like Trent and Robertson back into the team and get them back fit and refreshed, because I think they're both struggling really, really physically and mentally at this moment in time. And you could say that for a lot of these Liverpool players. So I like what I see here. I hope you guys do. Obviously, comment down below your thoughts on this. Do you agree with me? Is this a lineup that you would like to see? If equally, you can be very critical of this. You can point out, the areas of weakness, because look, every team, every formation is going to have areas of weakness, and what have I overlooked. Either way, comment down below, guys, your starting 11s of what you would like to see against Napoli, or what you would like to see Liverpool try over these next few weeks, and just comment down below, guys, your thoughts on Liverpool and where you think we can improve. I do think we will, I do think we can, but equally I think tactically we need to be less rigid and just fucking go for it a little bit more at times. Just take the restraints off, because I feel like we're playing with one arm tied behind our back at this moment in time. But yeah, anyway, guys, comment down below the Liverpool teams that you want to see over these next few weeks. So if you enjoyed the video, definitely give it a like, subscribe for Big Sam's Long Balls Football Podcast. We are nearly at 100 subscribers, so it would be amazing if we could get to 100 subscribers. For such a small channel, that would mean the world to me and Chris. So yeah, if you enjoyed the video, guys, give us a like, subscribe, comment down below, and we'll see you very soon. So thank you so much for watching.